Alright, have you ever had an idea? Well, me neither. But if I did have an idea, it would be this. Imagine Super Smash Bros., but instead of me paying for it, I got paid to make it. Sounds awesome, right? Well, let me tell you all about my latest game project. We're gonna call it Generic Ass Fighting Game. In this video, I'm gonna tell you how I've developed this game so far, and what the future of this game project is going to be. So what is this fantastic game that's definitely not Super Smash Bros.? Well, I'm so very glad you asked. This game is a kick-ass new platform fighter I'm developing, which has the insanely unique mechanic of the more you're damaged, the further you fly. Also, to make it stand out a little bit more, you have a health bar. So even if you manage to recover from being knocked off the stage, you can still be killed by your opponent slowly whittling down your health. Honestly though, this game is heavily inspired by Super Smash Bros. Because my roommate and I play Melee every night for hours, and that's kind of inspired me to recreate it in a way. So what has been done to create this masterpiece of a game? Well, first I spent a day learning how Unity's new input system works, since I've just been using their old input system up until now. And having used the new one for several weeks, I can safely say that it is a lot better than the old one. Why the hell have I not been using this before now? It's so much nicer. I can just add the inputs in this menu and easily detect when one is starting and create a function for each input and then assign that function in the editor in a very similar way to how UI buttons are handled. The first implementation of this system did have the slight issue that every controller would move the same character on screen because I hadn't added a way for the game to distinguish between different controllers. To remedy this was pretty simple. I just created an input manager script which handles adding new players to the game. After that worked, I was able to start managing player controls since it was still hella bare bones. First I gave the player the ability to walk and jump. This was rather easy because I just stole the player movement code from Euclid Valley. Buy now on Steam, by the way. After that, I simply coded the entire combat system, 2 different iterations of a knockback system based on Super Smash Bros., implemented an item spawner to spawn different weapons which would change your moveset when you picked them up, added a unique special move / recovery for each character, removed the weapon spawning system, and gave each fighter a unique moveset instead due to concerns from the art department, added a lobby map where you can select your fighter and start the game from, and added a system to play through an entire battle and determine the winner before playing another round. Oh, wait, you wanted to know how all of that works? Well, alrighty then. Combat is split into a few subsystems. The first subsystem gives stuff the ability to die. To achieve this, I created 2 scripts, Damage Source and Universal Health. Let's look at Universal Health first. This script's whole purpose is to be attached to literally anything that I want to have health, so long as that object has a hitbox, which I can also add to it. The way I got anything to die is by detecting collisions with objects that have the other important script attached to them, Damage Source. Damage Source can be attached to anything which has a collider, and it contains the variables related to damage. This means that whenever a damage source collides with an object that contains a universal health script, it will pass the damage through to the health script, where at long last the object will take damage. The next subsystem of combat is the actual attacks. While each attack has a damage source which handles applying the damage to the object you're hitting, there are also the individual attack scripts, which each handle when the attack is called and which button presses call them. Each attack script also handles which direction it needs to launch the player towards. This is done by creating a vector 3, which details the X, Y, and Z multipliers for the knockback. Each variable of this vector is then multiplied by the damaged player's knockback multiplier, the number which increases as your health goes down. And then finally, the player's velocity is set to this new vector. The possible attacks are neutral, which is when you press the button west on the controller, grounded side, which is the X input on the joystick and button west on the controller, grounded up, the positive Y input on the joystick and button west. Air side, which is when you're not grounded, you put the X input on the joystick and button west on the controller. Air up, when you're not grounded, positive Y input on the joystick and you press button west. And air down, which is when you're not grounded, and then you have a negative Y input on the joystick and button west is pressed on the controller. Every fighter has different variations of these attacks, but all fighters will share the same basic attack types and the corresponding inputs. Not long after the basics for combat were added, I was taking a shower and had a brilliant idea. What if instead of every character having a custom moveset, I added a bunch of weapons that changed your moveset when you grabbed them? I didn't know at the time that this is literally what Brawlhalla does, but I found out right after and decided to roll with it anyway. So I spent a bit of time implementing this, and you know what? Shockingly, it worked. The system worked, and it was very fun. So I kept rolling with it for a few days, and added random spawning to the items, and even started brainstorming what kinds of weapons I wanted to include in the demo. Oh yeah, by the way, I do plan on dropping the demo for this as soon as possible, but more on that later. The weapon system was fairly simple too. All it did was assign each weapon an ID, and each of the attack scripts I mentioned earlier had extra logic added to change their behavior depending on what the player's weapon ID was, which is different from the character ID that I also added later to track which character you play as. This way, all I had to do was create a script to change the weapon ID when you picked up a weapon, and which is easy enough. Anyway, I showed this weapon system to my artist friend Finn, and well, hey Finn.
Yo, what's up, man?
Check out this sick system I added to my game. As you can see, while this idea is really good on paper, it would exponentially increase the amount of art required since every single fighter would need a moveset for every single weapon. While this is definitely doable with digital art, it's not really doable the way we're doing the art. How are we doing the art? Well, each portion of the art is a little bit different, but we'll just cover the background since that's the majority of what I have done so far. I'm sure you all remember those spray painting videos that were popular a few years ago. Well, when those were popular, I, being the sheep that I am, decided to try them out for myself to varying degrees of success. Now, fast forward a few years, when it came to deciding how I wanted the art style of my newest game to look, I thought back to my spray painting career and decided that would be really cool and unique as the background for a platform fighter. Basically, imagine Final Destination from the Super Smash Bros. Series, but that's like all the stages. Wouldn't that be really cool? So now, whenever it's time for me to paint something, I drive to my great aunt's house where I keep all of my paint supplies and spend an afternoon making a few pieces of art. I then return to campus and use the Notes app on my phone to scan the photos in, and I email them to myself, edit them on my laptop so the colors pop more, and finally add them into Unity to be used in the game. Of course, this is less than half of the art which will eventually need to be in the game, but I can figure out how to paint later, and my boy Finn might be able to help out a bit as well. So I removed the weapon spawner. In retrospect, this was a great decision because it's allowed me to be more flexible with what each character's moveset is. Before, all the weapons would have had to be really general, so they didn't make anyone too overpowered. But now I can be as creative as I want with the movesets because it's easier to balance a character with only one set of moves versus someone with 3 sets of moves. To achieve this new single moveset system, I actually modified the weapon spawner so it gives each character their moveset based on their unique character ID, which is used by the character selector on the lobby stage to decide which character can do what, which I also set up around this time. Of course, there was still no way for players to recover when they were knocked off the edge of the stage, so I began implementing the special move/recovery system. The special is a move which is unique to each character and can be used as a fantastic movement option to get back on stage after falling off. The special is also just a really good movement option in general, even when you're just on the stage. First, I made the dash special, which was created by copying my dash code from Euclid Valley, buy on Steam, and modifying it to work with the new input system rather than the old one I used for Euclid Valley. Buy! Once this worked, I gave it to the fighter with ID number 1 and created a variation of it which resembled Sheik's teleport from Smash and set that one up for the fighter with ID number 2. I'm planning on having at least 3 unique fighters in the demo, so soon I'll have to come up with another special and moveset for the 3rd fighter. The final thing I've done is implement a basic version of the main gameplay loop, which goes as follows. Join lobby, select your fighter, press play, the game will select a random stage, you play the match, the winner is determined, you return to the lobby, and you repeat. This loop is very similar to that of Super Smash Bros. And many other fighting games, but I like the addition of the lobby as a little playground before you jump into the actual match. Now, about that demo I mentioned earlier. The current plan is to release the demo for this game in the Steam Next Fest in February. Right now, that may be a long shot since there's literally no artwork aside from the backgrounds in the game, but I think it's possible if I really lock in. To get to that point, I need to finish all 3 demo characters, play test and balance the demo, add art, create the sound effects, design a nice looking UI, add the main menu, come up with a name, and create the Steam page. Looks like I really need to lock in now. So if you've made it this far in the video and you wish to see how this project turns out, please consider subscribing so you don't miss my next development log and any other news about my game. Thanks for watching, and until next time.